On the morning of Friday, October 3rd, 2003, 32-year-old Dave King had just left a gym in Hoddesdon when a white transit van slowed as it drove past. At that moment, the passenger of the vehicle leant out of the window and fired 26 rounds from an AK-47, 5 of which hit King, killing him instantly. No warning, no mercy, just a message etched in blood, echoing the Essex Boys' savage legacy. This was no random hit. It was a gangland execution, planned to perfection. And as the van sped away, it left a trail that would unravel a web of vengeance and deceit. Welcome to Crime Pulse, where we dig into the cases that scar Britain's communities, giving voice to victims. If you're new here, please subscribe to join our pursuit of justice through stories of betrayal and retribution. Your support ensures we can keep unraveling these tales, delivering them straight to your feed with every new video. Leave a comment with your thoughts on this case to spark conversations about justice. Thank you for standing with us. Now, stay tuned for our dive into the underworld's hidden truths. During the 1990s, a small group of criminals ruled the drug scene around Essex and East London, flooding the streets and nightclubs with ecstasy and cocaine. This operation was run by 3 drug dealers, Tony Tucker, Pat Tate, and Craig Rolfe, known collectively as the Essex Boys. It was during the early 1990s that Glaswegian gangster Dave King first came into contact with Tony Tucker, who at the time operated a North London shop selling muscle-building supplements. The two men bonded over a shared interest in bodybuilding and soon developed a friendship. At 6 feet 3 inches, the muscular King was an intimidating presence, more than capable of handling himself in violent situations. The two men worked together as minders for ex-WBC super middleweight boxing champion Nigel Benn, enjoying the attention and celebrity access that came with the job. Tucker also ran a lucrative security business providing bouncers for clubs around Essex and East London, earning upwards of £1,500 a week. King earned himself a fearsome reputation as a skilled fighter working the doors, where the sale of drugs to nightclubbers was tightly controlled. During this time, King was sentenced to prison for violently assaulting a man in Stevenage and hiding his victim inside the boot of a car. While he was serving his sentence, Tony Tucker was murdered along with his criminal associates Pat Tate and Craig Rolfe. The 3 men were found shot to death in a Range Rover, parked down a small farm track in the village of Rettendon, Essex. Rolfe had been blasted in the side of the head, Tucker's face had been obliterated, and in the back seat, Pat Tate had been shot once in the stomach and twice in the head. This crime became known as the Rettendon Murders. Upon his release from prison, King joined another criminal organization known as the Canning Town Firm. He became close friends with one of its members, Darren Pearman, a violent and crazed individual connected to dangerous football hooligan gangs. As described by former Essex Boys gang member turned crime author Bernard O'Mahony, Pearman was a particularly violent individual. Darren Pearman was a member of the Canning Town Firm, probably the best little outfit in London. It was all part of the same group of people as the Intercity Firm, which was centered on the West Ham fans gang. They were all very violent. If someone stamped on their foot, they got murdered. Darren was a space job. He wore cardigans and had his hair in a side parting. He looked like a boffin, but was a raging lunatic. He was friends with Dave King, and a couple of years ago, they were in Charlie Chan's nightclub. There was a fight in which a man was cut by a bottle of glass. The glassing kicked off a big fight, and the doormen got involved. One of them was an ex-wrestler called Ronnie Fuller. Ronnie didn't know the rules. If you're a doorman and you grab people like Pearman and King, you're going to get it as well, because they have to keep their front. It was rumored, according to Underworld sources, that 27-year-old Pearman's death was the result of an argument started by King at Charlie Chan's North London nightclub, which ended with Ronnie Fuller, the then head doorman, forcibly ejecting both men from the establishment. Exactly 4 years to the day before his own death, King and Pearman were at the Epping Forest Country Club near Chigwell, Essex, when Pearman saw Fuller at the country club. A few weeks later, they clashed with him again outside Epping Forest Country Club, said O'Mahony. Sources state that the row stemmed from a dispute Pearman and Fuller were having over a girl, and there had been a previous fight in which Fuller had gotten the better of Pearman. Another fight soon broke out. According to eyewitnesses, Pearman's gang attacked Fuller with weapons, including a machete. This had been hidden in a sofa inside the club. During the scuffle, Fuller wrestled the weapon from Pearman, who sustained fatal injuries. O'Mahony said, Pearman was stabbed and pronounced dead by the time he rolled up to Whipps Cross Hospital in the back of a cab. Pearman's brother was also injured. Several months later, Fuller and an associate were released on police bail over the Pearman murder. On August 29, 2000, Fuller was blasted to death on the doorstep of his home by a hitman riding a motorbike. O'Mahony said, later, a motorbike hitman shot Ronnie twice in the head and 3 times in the chest, killing him outside his home in Grays, Essex, in front of his wife. According to O'Mahony, the Canning Town firm had refused to cooperate with the police investigation into Pearman's murder and announced they would sort it themselves. Ronnie Fuller had moved roughly 20 miles from Loughton, but as O'Mahony put it, it had not been nearly far enough. No one was ever tried for the murder of Ronnie Fuller. According to a police source, investigators suspected Pearman's father, Christopher Pearman, was behind the killing in retribution for the death of his son. It was later revealed that at the time of the Pearman murder, the Epping Forest Country Club was owned by David Hunt, who is considered one of the most violent gangsters in the United Kingdom and suspected head of a criminal organization known as the Hunt Syndicate. According to a former member of the Canning Town firm, King's presence within the gang resulted in bitter feuds. John Rollinson said that King had angered many with his attitude. He joined up with our firm after coming out of prison, much against my better judgment. Once he did, he systematically began to turn everybody against each other and caused a lot of bad feeling. One former associate said of King, he was a nice fella in his own way, but you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him, while another said, he was a violent bully. Police investigations linked King to the lucrative London trade in stolen watches, earning him the sobriquet Turnjum Rolex Dave. King was rumoured to sell the stolen watches to the Bratva, or Russian Mafia. Around this time, King began forming connections with other criminal groups. King eventually started his own nightclub in Stevenage, called the Renaissance. It became known as a notorious centre for drug dealing and was closed by the local council for non-payment of rent in 2002. One bar manager in the town said, "It was a drugs haven, it was full of them." By the early 2000s, he expanded his criminal activities, which included handling stolen property and drug dealing, and had begun trafficking large quantities of drugs into the United Kingdom. This lucrative but highly dangerous business had netted him hundreds of thousands in illicit profit, but also many enemies within the underworld. So lucrative was the drug trafficking business that King lived in a £554,000 home at Ardley Hearts, financed through his drug dealing and criminal activities. But Rolex Dave King knew the dangers he faced, which was why he took precautions wherever he went. One particular incident had caused King to suspect his life was in danger. In June 2002, a heroin shipment was intercepted by customs. A relatively common occurrence, however, this shipment was worth £100,000. King and 4 of his criminal associates were arrested over the 14-kilogram drug seizure. All 5 were charged with drug offences. However, proceedings against King, by then a father of 2, were dropped at an early stage. This prompted one of his co-defendants to shout in court that he was a grass, and soon caused a fallout within the criminal gang. His Gangland associates had been harbouring fears for some months that their firm had been infiltrated by a police or customs grass, and the ease with which King had got off pointed the finger towards him, said Detective Inspector Paul Maggie of Essex Police. D.I. Maggie said, "This is a tit-for-tat killing. King knew he had a problem, that there was a threat to his life. King took a contract out on Sharma. David Sharma, a one-time friend of King from North London, was so frightened of 6 feet 3 inches, 18 stone King that he fled to Cannes in the south of France and went into hiding under a false identity. When 2 of the other men arrested in the drug seizure along with King and Sharma, Roger Vincent and David Smith, heard about the threat to Sharma, they offered to have King shot in retaliation. Police said that was the motive for King's murder. Vincent from Penn, Bucks and Smith, who lived in Boreham Wood, Herts, contracted armed robber Dean Spencer from Manchester to carry out the hit. 31-year-old Smith armed himself with a Webley .38 pistol, loaded with 5 bullets, and went with another man to King's Stevenage home on September 22, 2003. They became convinced King was waiting for them and knew his reputation for ruthlessness, along with his powerful physique as a bodybuilder, which earned him the nickname Muscles. As they suspected, King had been forewarned about a possible threat to his life and was with Minder Ian Crocker. During this time, he had also taken to wearing a bulletproof vest. Outside King's home, the four men were locked in a standoff before Spencer lost his nerve and fled. Having pulled out of the deal, Roger Vincent became violent when he found he would have to do the job himself. Spencer was later arrested for committing an armed robbery, and under questioning told detectives about the murder plot against King. During his later trial at Luton Crown Court, it was learned he told investigators, "When I saw how big he was and wearing that bulletproof vest, I knew my little gun would be useless against him." When Vincent, a 33-year-old Gangland debt collector and fixer, heard that Spencer had bottled out, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He enlisted the help of 33-year-old David Smith, who was to act as his driver and also assist with the murder. Aware that King knew about the murder plot against him and that he routinely wore a bulletproof vest, the two men obtained a Hungarian-made Kalashnikov AKS-47 machine gun and loaded it with full metal jacket, armor-piercing bullets. The AKS-47, an AK-47 with a folding metal stock, is issued mainly to paratroopers and members of elite special forces. The detailed planning that followed was conducted over mobile phones, and evidence from phone bills was used by police to piece together the movements and motives of the main players. With forensic evidence left by the killer, CCTV recordings, descriptions of the suspects from witnesses, surveillance, and recordings of conversations, police were able to put together a profile of the murder, which was later presented to the court at the trial of Vincent and Smith. Vincent and Smith used a stolen white transit van and a stolen Mercedes as getaway cars and proceeded to stalk King until they saw their chance to kill him. This came on October 3rd, 2003, when Dave King left the Physical Limits Gym in Brewery Road, Hoddesdon, Hertfordshire, in the company of his bodyguard, Ian Crocker. As the two men walked outside, a white van, driven by Smith, pulled up alongside King. In that moment, he must have realized what was about to happen. Sitting in the passenger seat, Vincent opened fire on King with the AK-47 Kalashnikov assault rifle, discharging at least 26 rounds of armor-piercing ammunition. In what was described in court as a classic drive-by assassination, King was struck at close range by 5 rounds from the 3-second burst, hitting him in the chest, arm, and leg. He died instantly. Other rounds peppered King's car, others struck his friend Ian Crocker, and others were later found in the walls of the gym. Some of the bullets that hit the gym went through the wall and into the gym. It was the first time that weapon was used in Britain in automatic mode. The killers then made their getaway, torching the vehicles to cover their tracks. However, the killers failed to adequately dispose of crucial evidence linking them to the crime. Close to the burnout van, police found a discarded plastic glove. Inside was a palm print of David Smith. The day following the murder, a couple walking beside Braden Water at Great Yarmouth on the Norfolk Broads made another key discovery. They spotted a man hurling a red sports bag into the water before hurriedly running away. The walkers retrieved the holdall, which contained an AKS-47 assault rifle and spare rounds of ammunition. Police were able to prove the gun, which had previously belonged to the Hungarian prison authorities, was the same one used to kill Dave King. Further evidence was recovered from the murder weapon. On the lip of the curved ammunition clip, investigators found a trace of Smith's DNA. Meanwhile, on a towel in the same bag, forensic officers recovered saliva DNA from Vincent, definitively linking him to the crime. Additional evidence was found on another towel containing fibers from a unique jute rug located at a flat used by Vincent. CCTV footage recovered by investigators placed Smith, wearing a distinctive hat, at a filling station in Hoddesdon. Mobile phone transmissions from Hoddesdon to Cannes, analyzed by police minutes after the shooting, indicated that Vincent and Smith had called David Sharma to inform him they had murdered King. Sharma, wanted for his involvement in the Kingslaying, disappeared and was actively hunted across Europe by Interpol. A fourth man, 38-year-old Julian Elphys from High Wycombe, Bucks, was convicted of assisting an offender when it was proven he had helped Vincent lie low after the shooting. Arrested shortly after the killing, Vincent boasted to detectives under questioning that he made £250,000 in cash every year from a string of clubs he controlled in the east of England. Vincent, who drove a £100,000 convertible Aston Martin DB7, was charged with King's murder. Assets worth £1.6 million were frozen by court order on the grounds that his funds were linked to drug trafficking and money laundering. The assets included his house in Hertfordshire, a £1 million property in London, and £7,500 in 4 bank accounts. A detective said, "Whenever we talked to anyone in the underworld about Vincent, we discovered people were terrified of him. He is not a big man physically, but has a fearsome reputation for violence and as a hired gun." For his part in the murder plot, father of four Vincent was sentenced to serve at least 30 years. His criminal associate and getaway driver, David Smith, was sentenced to a minimum of 25 years for his role in the murder. Feuds was jailed for 5 years for assisting Vincent, while Dean Spencer admitted conspiracy to murder King and was sentenced at a later date. After they were convicted, Mr. Justice Wilkie said, "This was a thoroughly planned, ruthless, and brutally executed assassination of a criminal by a small team. It was committed in a public street during daytime and involved an automatic firearm. It was only by great fortune that no other passers-by were seriously injured, or worse. The murder of Dave King had been orchestrated as part of a plot to eliminate him before he managed to kill David Sharma. The two killers were friends with Sharma and offered to wipe out King purely as a favor, with no payment involved. Rolex Dave King was a dangerous individual, known for his violent tendencies and criminal activities. However, not everyone remembers him for the crimes he committed. His parents, Jimmy and Norma King, remember their Glasgow-born son as a football-crazy family man. In a statement after his death, they said, "He was ambitious for himself and for his family and wanted the very best for his children." A devout Muslim, David's bodybuilding formed a great part of his lifestyle. He was proud of his appearance and a perfectionist in all that he did. The violent death of Dave King came as a shock to the community in Hoddesdon, but in the criminal underworld, rivalries and killings are not uncommon. Despite this, a police source said, "Whatever someone's past, no one deserves to be killed like this, but it was the way of the world he operated in." This was the rise and violent fall of Dave Rolex King, a man whose world of fast money, betrayal, and ruthless power finally caught up with him. If you found this case as gripping as we did, don't forget to hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a like. It helps us bring you more real stories from the brutal world of organized crime. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was this a betrayal waiting to happen, or just another casualty of the underworld? Stay tuned for more.